Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway, a nostalgic look back at our favorite Rangers from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Tom Browning, along with my co-host Rob Berger. We can be heard on Google Play, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and of course, our website at gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. That's gotommyboyproductions.libsyn.com. Please check it out. You can capture all of our episodes on our webpage. You can contact us by just clicking on the contact bar. You can leave a message. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear about the players that you would like for us to profile. Love to hear about maybe some of the seasons other than the 60s, 70s, and 80s that really made an impact on you as a fan. Again, we will be going off the menu every once in a while. We'll be talking about the current day New York Rangers, the state of the franchise, and again, we love to talk about previous playoff games, impactful trades that took place in New York Rangers history. So wherever you listen to us, please hit subscribe. It's free. So without further ado, here are your hosts, Tom Browning and Rob Berger. Happy New Year, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. I'm Tom Browning, along with my sidekicks, co-host Rob Berger, and my son Mike Browning. Happy New Year, guys. Welcome to 2021 and a brand new season for the New York Rangers.
It's hockey opening night eve.
That's right, Thursday. Right. Wow. It just seems like yesterday Tampa Bay was celebrating the Stanley Cup in an empty bubble.
Well, it kind of was.
Yeah, I guess it was. What was that, 2 months ago? 3 months ago?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's unreal. But anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. Mike and Rob and I are looking forward to a great year in 2021, and we'll get back to profiling some of the great New York Rangers or forgotten New York Rangers starting next show. But today we want to kind of preview the upcoming season for the New York Rangers, and who better to do that? And also we'll touch on a quick overview of the league in general, some of the teams that are showing a lot of promise, maybe touch on some of the other local teams like the Devils and the Islanders. But who better than Rob and Mike to get us started on what they think the Rangers are going to do this year, maybe some of the young talent that we have, potential moves between now and Thursday, if any, or at least in the beginning of the season. Rob, let's start off with you today. Let's give us an overview, and again, this will be a conversation. This will be a dialogue, so we'll interject. But why don't you get started on your thoughts on the Rangers as we enter Thursday's opening night against the New York Islanders?
Well, I think the number one thing that Ranger fans need to focus on this year is just how deep the system is, and how much great youth they have, and not to get frustrated if things don't come together this year. And also the fact that I can't remember a Ranger team that had two legitimate Calder Trophy Rookie of the Year candidates. That's remarkable. You can consider where this team was a few years ago, that so much talented youth went for the Blue Shirts.
Second one you're referring to would be DeAndre Miller. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not even talking about Miller. I was talking about Lafreniere and Shesterkin.
Oh, Shesterkin, yeah. I keep on forgetting that Shesterkin is a rookie. Yeah, he played last year. Yep.
He didn't play. He did not qualify. Yeah, he's still a rookie. So both of them, and I think Shesterkin is probably number one on the list. It's always so hard to predict how wingers will do as rookies. If they'll hit their mark in their second year, or third year, or their first year. But I think Shesterkin can carry it. Who hope so, right? That's one of the main keys of the season. The only thing going against him is I worry about the defense in front of him and exposing him to a lot of high risk shots. As the Ranger goaltenders last year, for most of the season, faced the most high percentage shots of anybody else in the league. So hopefully the defense can improve on that, and I don't have a lot of reason to believe that they will.
A couple of points I'd like to comment on. Then Mike will hand it over to you. Your thoughts. It's funny. A couple of things with Shesterkin. There's a guy on Long Island, last name Sorokin, who, according to history, was a better goaltender over in Russia than Shesterkin was. He was the more highly touted prospect, and people I think are forgetting about him because he is playing on Long Island and not at MSG. Obviously Lou Lamoriello and Trotz have some very high hopes, and he also has to be, considered as a candidate as long as he gets enough ice time. I don't know if he's going to be 1A or 1B when the season starts, but you can't forget him. That's one thing. And then, two, with the Rangers still having a weak link on their D, it's amazing that it's still the case when you consider how heavy they loaded up on young defensemen over the last 3, 4, 5 drafts. It still is their weak link. It still is their weak point. And I'm just wondering, what gives on that score? Mike, I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Well, the guys that they've drafted aren't the problem. A lot of these guys are still, the main prospects that they've drafted haven't made their debuts yet. Trading for Adam Fox wasn't a draft pick. He's a young guy who was probably their best defenseman last year. I think K'Andre Miller is going to make the team. Looks like, by all indications point to him playing pretty significant minutes this year. And, scouting reports indicate that he's going to be a good player too. And I think he's going to be an upgrade. Nils Lundqvist is becoming an elite level player, not just an elite player for a young guy, but an elite player overall in the SHL. It's such a young guy. It's pretty impressive what he's doing. So I think these guys will definitely be reinforcements that will boost the overall defensive core of the Rangers. But there's still guys that have been problems in their D core for years. You still have Brendan Smith in there. They signed Jack Johnson, who's by all stats one of the worst players in NHL. So I don't know what that's supposed to help.
Unbelievable.
And Jacob Trouba was a little bit of a disappointment last year.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So they're gonna shuffle around the pairs a little bit. They're gonna inject some serious talent with K'Andre Miller, and we'll see what happens. But absolutely, it's almost becoming a joke. How it seems impossible that for the Rangers to fix their defensive problems. They hired a new coach in Jacques Martin, but apparently he was the one who wanted to bring Jack Johnson in. So
yeah, I heard that.
That's already dubious. So who knows?
Jacques Martin has got a great resume. He's been around, I think, since I was a kid. He's been around since I was a young man. He was a great head coach. He was a very good head coach. I think he's won a Stanley Cup as a head coach. I think he knows his hockey. But you're right. The thing about Jack Johnson is they signed him for $1 million, and they could have had Shara for $900,000, or was it $850,000? So I'm a little surprised that Jeff Gorton, with his Boston ties, didn't investigate the opportunity. If you're going to bring in a player for a year, which is probably all Johnson's going to play anyway.
It was dumb. It was a dumb move. There's no other way to put it. It was just it didn't make a lick of sense. They finally rid themselves of Mark Stahl, who great Ranger, but has been a serious problem for them defensively over the last few seasons. Mm-hmm. And we thought we were getting some fresh air, so to speak, from the defense, and he goes and signs the literal worst defenseman in the league. So it's like you said, Jacques Martin's been around a long time. It's worth asking if his view of the NHL and his defensive system might be a little outdated. If he thinks Jack Johnson is a solution.
Yeah. And who does he skate with as a left-handed defenseman? Can't put him. You don't want to put him with Fox.
DeAngelo. I think DeAngelo is his partner right now.
That's what I thought. Yeah. That's what a lot of people are projecting. And one thing about DeAngelo is he had that nice offensive season, that he's coming off of. He had the highest shooting percentage of any defenseman in the last 3 years, which is just,
there's going to be some regression.
There's going to be some regression there. There's, people don't have that high shooting percentage multiple years in a row. And he didn't play that. It'd be interesting to see how much ice time he gets this year. I think he averaged less than 20 minutes a game. Do you put them as a third pairing? I don't know. Again, they rushed it. The reason, they couldn't have gotten Chara at the time, but if they waited, he would have been available
Yeah.
now.
Well, that's my
Absolutely.
point. That's my point. I think they had an advantage with Jeff Gorton and his ties with Boston, his knowledge. I'm surprised that he didn't have some insight on that. I mean, everyone saw that.
It's because Martin wanted him.
Yeah,
Martin wanted him.
I guess.
That's all it was. It's the new D coach wanted a certain guy that he felt would fit the system. So, Jeff Gordon went out and got him.
The good news is that it's only for 1 year.
Right.
And they won't have to worry about a buyout. They have 3 other guys on buyout after next year. Still, so I guess that's the positive thing to think about. And
yeah,
again, we haven't really got to it yet, but the expectations for this year still aren't playoffs.
I agree.
If you think about that division, there are 5 teams ahead of them that are stronger.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a second. I'm going to get to that. It's a good point, Rob. I want to get to the division they're in a moment. I just want to stay on the defense for a second. I know you guys are not as big of Brendan Smith fans as I am, but I think he's better than Jack Johnson. I don't understand why he doesn't play with DeAngelo as a third pair and have Johnson as the – I mean, this stuff is going to play out. I mean, if Johnson, craps the bed on Thursday and Saturday – and it gets off to a horrific start, you're going to have Brendan Smith in there, and Jack Johnson will be in civvies, obviously not playing. It says a lot when you got Lindgren and Fox as your number one defensive unit, 2 young kids, and you got, seasoned veterans like Trouba, who, really should be almost captain material for the New York Rangers, having to rebound from a very disappointing first season. And, this Niles Lundqvist, there's some talk, I don't know how accurate it is, but there was a mention that when he's through with his season, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if it's a rumor or if it's an old rumor.
It's a rumor. I don't know what you're going to say, but I know it's a rumor.
Well, go ahead. Tell me what I was going to say.
You were probably going to say that he's not going to come to New York.
Yeah, that was a rumor a while ago.
Why would he? Why? Why enter the NHL draft if you're not going to come to New York and make 30 times what you'd make in the SCL and play in front of in the Premier Hockey League in the world? What would motivate a young hockey player who's devoted their life to hockey not to come to the NHL?
Well, that's
99 out of 100 times those rumors are false, and they just people like to start rumors. That's just how the internet works. But to worry about that would be, I think, a huge waste of time.
Well, I'm not worried about it. I'm not losing any sleep over it, but I'm just saying it's something that was very unusual for it to come out. Maybe there's some stuff going on behind the scenes where he doesn't want to come to New York. Maybe he's thinking about maybe staying where he is overseas and playing professionally there, or maybe he wants to play for somebody else. I mean, I thought it was very unusual for a guy who's so highly touted that rumor came to the fore a few months back, and there wasn't really any rebuttal to it. There really wasn't anyone really squashing that, like Davidson or Jeff Gorton or anyone else within the Rangers organization saying that's just not true. I mean, obviously you saw the same rumor, Mike, right?
I haven't seen it.
But how'd you know what I was talking about then?
because every single prospect has a rumor like that. So I knew what you're going to say.
All right.
And like I said, 99 out of 100 times, there's nothing to it, or it's false.
Okay. Well, I hope it's false, because I think he's, like you said, he's very highly touted. The Rangers raved about him when they selected him, and obviously he's done a great job in developing over the last couple of years. And he would be obviously, they're a lot more of a flex. There's a lot more maneuverability for Jeff Gordon if they can get him to Broadway at least next year anyway. Any concerns about the lack of Rangers heft? I mean, obviously Miller and Trouba provide some decent size, and Lindgren's a tough hockey player. Do you think the Rangers need to even beef up a little bit more on the blue line as far as physicality goes, or not so much? Rob, what do you think?
I don't think they're going to. For what it's worth, dailyfaceoff.com, which is very accurate in their predictions for lines and pairings and things like that, has the Rangers starting the season with Miller and Trouba as their number one pairing.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
That would be cool to see. I always get nervous what does that mean for the penalty kill? And and are you going to put Miller against top level talent right away? Kind of like to see the way, Aaron Ekblad in his Calder Trophy winning season, didn't do that. They protected him and let him learn the league, and just to have Miller thrown in there against top tier talent especially when you're playing guys like, playing the Bruins and Penguins on a much more regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be scary, but yeah, I mean, I think they do need to get bigger, but they need to get, I think it's smarter defense more so than bigger defense is their issue.
Yeah. I mean, given David Quinn's track record, he probably won't play K'Andre Miller on the penalty kill too much. But I think Trouba and Miller on your first pair, that's some serious size. I mean, that's one of the bigger pairings in the league. Brendan Smith and Lindgren, not huge guys, but very physical, solid guys who like to hit. Even DeAngelo, he's a little guy.
Yeah, he's tough.
And it's not his game, but he doesn't back down. So
no.
I am not concerned about toughness or size on the Rangers blue line this year.
Okay.
That's not I don't think that's going to be a big deal.
So you think it'll be Miller, Trouba as number one, as opposed to what I have read, and other folks have mentioned Fox and Lindgren being the number one pair. You think it'll wind up being Trouba and Miller as the number one pair this year?
Well, I think any pair that Trouba's on will be number one.
Okay.
I think that they're going to give him the most minutes, even if he doesn't improve drastically from last year.
Okay.
I would say that Trouba, and to start the season, probably K'Andre Miller will be your first pair. Maybe they'll mix it up a little bit. Maybe they'll put DeAngelo with Trouba a little bit. Who knows?
Okay.
But yeah, I think that'll be the top pair. And Fox and Lindgren will be kind of 1B. They'll get plenty of time as well. So we'll see how it shakes out. We know how these things don't last very long.
Yeah. Well, last year they were the best pair last year, no doubt about it. I mean, those two, they just gelled right away, and they were the most consistent pair, no doubt, last year.
Oh yeah, Fox is just an elite player. He's got everything,
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how he progresses this year. I think, like you said, he'll very likely be the Rangers' best defenseman again. But I think they view Trouba as that true kind of minutes cruncher that they'll leave out there for probably 20 minutes a game or so.
Right. And maybe Miller will, playing more D will allow Trouba to show more of his offensive game more than he did last year. As far as, and I think probably within the next month, I would not be surprised if Smith has replaced Johnson as one of the, like the fifth or sixth defenseman on the team, and then Johnson will be, on the bench or the extra D guy. As far as the goaltending goes, you're pretty comfortable with Georgiev and Shesterkin, manning the nets. Do you think Georgiev they've committed to him as the backup, or do you think he might be trade bait as we get into later on the season?
Well, they're always going to be listening to offers, and I think Georgiev's name's always going to be coming up. But it does seem like, at least to start the season, it'll be a 1A and 1B type of situation. Quinn didn't commit to naming one guy as his starter, so that tells you something right there. But Shesterkin's already, he was already playing at a borderline elite level last year, and it was his first year, and then, in the NHL, he hasn't had too much experience being in the United States, even though he played in Hartford for a while. So I think he'll only get better. And speaking of the Calder run, I think the Rangers will have several guys on the team who will be in the conversation. I think Vegas has Shesterkin as the favorite right now, given how well he played last year. But yeah, you can't rule out Alexis Lafreniere, and I think even K'Andre Miller might make a case. I think he's that good and that talented. So it'll be a fun year for sure. Rob,
what do you think of the Rangers goaltending situation? How would you rate them right now compared to? And we're going to segue after this to the teams that they play in their division, and then later on we'll talk about the Ranger forwards. What are your thoughts on the Rangers goaltending tandem as it looks right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for the team is the schedule. This year's schedule is very brutal for everyone in the league, but for two young goaltenders, that makes it, I think exceptionally tougher. But they still are top tier, and I think they're in the top half of the division in terms of goaltending. Of all the divisions, I don't think theirs is the hardest in terms of goaltending, just overall teams maybe, but Rask is still top 5 goaltender in the league, even though he's on the way down. But other than that, You can look at Carter Hart, what kind of year he's going to have. But then other than that, I don't know who else would be better than the Rangers goaltending.
What about the Islander goaltender? How about the duel they have there, Varlamov?
I don't think that's a 1A, 1B. I think that's a 1 and 2 for this year.
Okay.
With Varlamov, how I understood it. And then
the Capitals have another really good young Russian goalie, Ilya Samsonov. So it'll be a Russian goalie takeover in this division, and we'll see a lot of young, kind of the future, really. It's the future top 5 guys, 3 of the future top 5 guys likely, in Sorokin, Shesterkin, and Samsonov. It's going to be an interesting, and they're going to be facing off, with each other a ton in this division. So it'll be definitely interesting to see. Yeah.
And then the Rangers have, I guess, in the minors, you got Adam Huska and Tyler Wall. Is that right? Those are the 2 goaltenders they have in Hartford if they play in the AHL this year.
Yeah, and they're not bad either. So the Rangers are flush with goalie prospects right now, and they've done a good job, kind of continuously adding new guys to the pool. Seems like they take the goalie depth in their organization very seriously, and they have been continuing to draft guys, even though fans might wonder why with all the goalies that they have, but it's definitely paid dividends because there's a lot of attrition with goalies. You don't know what you're getting a lot of times when you draft them, so a lot of guys come and go, but to continuously have strong kind of cornerstone guys, prospects that you can kind of plug into the future and maybe even trade for roster value is really good. The Rangers have done a good job doing that.
Rob, I guess the Devils were upset that they let Kincaid go, right? After
I know
Corey Crawford just packs his bags and leaves Chicago. I mean, leaves New Jersey. Weird.
I know. It's Blackwood's gonna have to carry them, right?
Yeah. What happened with Corey Crawford? I know it was a personal thing, but geez, that was kind of a weird thing. A couple practices and up he left, huh? Wow.
Yeah. Who knows what's, and he's not 100% healthy. So they'll go with Blackwood and Wedgwood. Oof. Blackwood's, he's not horrible. Again, the issue this season is that you need 2 goalies this year.
Right.
Every team needs 2 goalies. And I think that puts the Rangers in a better situation than, say, Pittsburgh. You're playing so many back-to-back games. You're playing 3 to 4 games a week. There's no more 3 days off between games. I mean, it's going to be an intense season, and I think we're going to see a lot of goaltender injuries, unfortunately, just from overuse for teams that need it. So, if you're like a Montreal that could be, who will be better this year, and you're battling for a top spot, you're running Carey Price every day. And, I think these teams are going to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, maybe the Rangers can swing a deal with Kincaid, right? Maybe they can. They got some leverage now. Maybe they could swing a draft pick in return for him. I don't know.
Well, more likely it'd be Georgiev. I think he has more trade value. I think the Rangers are going to be pretty active on the trade market, and they're going to be able to use their good financial situation and buying power as an organization to their advantage. I think you'll see a lot of owners really strapped for cash after this year, losing a lot of money. I mean, the Rangers are going to be losing money too this year.
Sure,
but they have money. So I think the Rangers are going to definitely flex their financial might and be in on some of these young guys who are looking for more money or a different team. Some guys maybe that other teams can't afford to keep, looking for maybe future capital like prospects and draft picks, which the Rangers also have in spades. I think you're going to see, maybe Georgiev involved in one of those trades, maybe for a Dubois or who knows, another player that hasn't even, come up yet. But, a 23, 24, 25-year-old young veteran, maybe borderline elite, maybe elite player that teams are looking, cash-strapped teams are looking to deal. I think the Rangers are going to be involved in all those talks. Georgiev might be involved. Other guys might be involved, but for sure.
So, Rob, who would you package if you were Jeff Gordon? Who would you package for Dubois from Columbus? Would you be in on him? Because the Rangers definitely have a need for a second or third line center. If Dubois comes to New York, he would be automatically a second line center, and Strome, if he wasn't moved as part of the deal, would slide down to number 3. Who do you think would be somebody that Columbus would want, and what would be a fair trade, do you think?
I think they'd want to pick. I think a team like Columbus wants picks. That's the thing. The Rangers don't have a lot of defensive depth to move. So I think most likely they give up a Strome, right? They have 4 pending RFAs on offense, right? Buchnevich, Hedl, Gauthier, and Strome is still, he's still not that big of a number, but if he's still playing with Panarin, he's going to have good numbers.
Yeah.
And he's movable. I don't know if Columbus would take him.
Yeah. I don't know if he's good enough. Yeah. I think Columbus would be looking more at a Capo Caco or maybe Mika Zibanejad style trade.
You can't make that trade and get rid of Zibanejad.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think that's what they'll be looking for.
Well, that's a non-starter. I mean, is Dubois that much better than Strome as far as numbers go?
Oh yeah, I mean he's a young guy, but he's an elite. He's upward. He's on the upward trajectory. You know what you're getting with Strome. Strome's a borderline second, third line center. Plays well with Panarin, which is a positive for the Rangers, but that doesn't really help, other teams who would trade for Strome. I mean, I think scouts and front offices of other teams realize that a lot of Strome's production is because he plays with Artemi Panarin. But Pierre-Luc Dubois was drafted as the franchise player for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They want to keep him. He wants out. So now they're trying to get as much value as they can for him. And to them, it's, they need something that is as close to a sure thing as possible. Zibanejad, maybe not. He's a little old.
How about Hedl?
Compared to well, Hedl would be a good guy for sure.
How about Hedl and then a number 1? Hedl and a number 1 draft pick, or maybe even throw Strome in there. Hedl, Strome, and well, that seems an awful lot.
That does seem like a lot.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, for a young number 1 center that's cost controlled, I think he's going to make $4 million a year for the next 2 years, while probably scoring 75, 80 points. I mean, I think that's one of the hottest assets in the league right now. And, you're definitely going to be competing with most, if not every other team in the league for him. So it's going to cost a pretty penny. It's going to hurt. I think they're going to be asking for Lafreniere. They're going to be asking for Capo Caco. They're going to be asking for Zibanejad. They may not get it, but I think that's, what you're going to be negotiating down from. So a package of Hedl, a first rounder, and Strome, I think I'd do that, every day, twice on Sunday, so okay. I think that's what you have to work with.
Hedl might get a lot of minutes with Lafreniere this year. Hedl might see it, so having that left wing might do him well. So,
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the forwards. You just mentioned Hedl centering Lafreniere, and I guess Gauthier would be on the right side, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
So if you look at some of these guys let's look at the range of forwards right now. You got Zibanejad, you got Buchnevich, and Kreider. I'm just wondering if, you look back in the days when Bill Torrey was running the New York Islanders and, all the first-round picks, Billy Harris or Mike Bossy, they automatically were, when they were first-round picks, they automatically were assigned to the first line. I'm just wondering, it might make more sense to have Lafreniere replace Kreider and move Kreider to the third line. I'm not so sure Kreider is a first-line left wing. I mean, you guys know my thoughts about Kreider. He's on the back of a milk carton half the season. You wonder where he is and whatnot. I'm just wondering if maybe Kreider needs to slide down with Hedl and Gauthier and put Lafreniere up with Zibanejad and Buchnevich. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think the advantage of playing Lafreniere with Hedl is that he's not going to go up against top defensive forwards.
Good point.
You put him with Zibanejad on the top line, or you put him with Strome on the second line. All of a sudden, he's going to be seeing a lot more of guys like Bergeron and Crosby. That makes with those guys in the ice and those top lines. Again, remember, those are they're playing this year. And a lot more games than a lot more often than usual. Again, it's all about letting him find his way. But I see what you're saying. I definitely see what you're saying. I think potentially Lafreniere could have some moments on a power play with with those guys being on the ice with Panarin and Zibanejad and
Sure.
Buchnevich and so on. But from a shift to shift, I wonder how many minutes they expect him to play to start the season.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, maybe they would just want to ease him into it, maybe a third of the season or 2/3 into the season. Well, Quinn, he flips lines anyway. I mean,
that's an important thing to hit too. I mean, we're talking about these lines and who's playing with whom, but in reality,
right,
5 minutes into opening night, it's all going to be different.
Exactly.
Yeah. But he also likes his workhorses. I think I do disagree with you. I think Kreider is a quintessential first-line power forward, but at the same time, a lot of times lines are greater than the sum of their parts, and you put guys together because they play well together. And the Kreider, Zibanejad, Buchnevich line has been one of the best lines on the Rangers for a couple of years now. So I think that's the first line. You don't mess with it; it works. And we saw that Strome and Panarin worked well together. I like that they're putting Kakko on that line. I think he's playing with Panarin is really going to jumpstart his game. So to me that makes a lot of sense. And then you have your sheltered third line with Lafreniere, Hedl, who's a good facilitator, improved drastically defensively last year. He was a borderline number 2 center last year. Gauthier is a fast power forward that adds a nice complement to that line. And these guys, this is a line that will create mismatches. You can deploy them against kind of other teams' weak third, fourth lines. And I think they'll, start them in the offensive zone. And I think they're going to cause a lot of problems for other teams. And I think kind of Lafreniere is that X factor that you can use that way, because he's a rookie, but he's so skilled, and his hockey sense is far beyond his years. So,
right.
You can stick him on that line, and you really use him as a mismatch. And I think Hedl is the same exact way. So I'm excited for that line. I think we're going to see a lot of production out of it. Quinn will be creative with how they use it, and it'll be really productive for him.
I hope so, Rob. The concern I have is, there's a few guys here that I think really need to step up, and I think Hedl's one of them. I know, Mike, you thought he had a real good year last year. They got bounced. Let's put it in perspective. They looked ugly, darn right ugly in the bubble against Carolina last year, right? I mean, even the first line was invisible last year. I mean, there are some guys I think really need to step up this year. Hedl, I think, needs to show, significant improvement. I know he was better last year than he was the year before. I think Hedl really needs to take a big leap this year. Gauthier, I know he was, a first-round pick or a second-round pick when he was with Carolina. He's got speed, he's got size, but he didn't score any goals for them last year. I mean, he didn't put the puck in the net, and I think he's got to show some offensive game. Kakko really has to do something this year. I mean, he was a number 1 pick, right?
Number 2 overall.
Number 2 overall, but a first-rounder. I mean, those guys usually in the National Hockey League, they usually make an immediate impact. He's got to make an immediate impact this year. I mean, he's got to show that, he's not a Elias Anderson, I mean, he's got to do something.
Well, yeah. If he doesn't do anything this year, there should be alarm bells all over the place.
And
right. It'll be very unfortunate, but I'm not worried about his rookie year. He was a rookie. He's 19.
Yeah, 19.
He's in a new country. He's filling out. And the same thing with Hedl. We forget how young he is. He was one of the youngest players in his draft year, and he made the Rangers as a 19-year-old as well. He's only 21. So these guys are still filling out. Hedl's going to be a monster. He's 6'2". When he joined the Rangers, he was 185 pounds. He's 205 pounds now.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting faster. He's getting stronger. I think he shows some good hockey sense. I think he shows some really good skill. I'm excited. He's kind of flying under the radar because of all the guys the Rangers added after him. But I'm really excited to see what he does this year, and I have really high hopes for him. And Gauthier is, he'll probably be a Seattle Kraken next year. But I think he's going to be good for the Rangers this year, and he's not going to be asked to do too much given with who he's playing with. He's going to be a puck retrieval guy. He's got to get the puck to Lafreniere. He's got to get the puck to Hedl. He's got to be physical, below the circles.
Right.
And I think he's built for that. He's going to be willing to do that. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this line. I think it's going to work well.
I am too. I've got high hopes for them. Rob, what do you think of Buchnevich? He seems like he's had a good week of practice leading up to the game against the Islanders.
Yeah, and that RFA season, right? I can't wait till we talk about Seattle and what happens with this Rangers roster. Going into it,
I think Gauthier is going to be the casualty. I think.
Well, there might be more than one.
Yeah, I think and see how. Yeah, I know it's way too early to talk about it, right? Because there could be trades and deals and who knows what. Yeah, but he's primed to get such a big contract if he has a big year, right? He's only making if he not only, but he's making over 3 right now. So at 25, he has a big season. He can definitely explode. Obviously for the Rangers, obviously for the Rangers to be successful, he has to have a big year.
Well, we've been waiting for Buchnevich to produce forever now. So it would be great if this is the year he turns out and becomes a star. That would be everything that Ranger fans have wanted from this guy for the last several years. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I think Buch is a great top 6 forward. He does what you want him to do. But I think there's always a little bit more that Rangers fans were hoping for from him.
Right.
He shows flashes every now and then, and we're all waiting for that to come out and for him to become a true star. Supposedly he had a great camp. I thought he was very good last year. He's in a contract year. He's in the dead of his prime right now, I think, at 25 years old. So I think this is the year that it happens. And I think he could be a 60-point player this year for sure.
And from a positive perspective, you want to think about last year from like an advanced metric perspective, if you will, was his strongest year, with the exception of the one thing he has a below average shooting percentage. So typically that's the kind of guy that you see to improve, right? He's strong. He had his best year defensively by far. He continues to. He's not a high. They still start him in the defensive zone, so he's someone they lean on for that. I can tell you I'm higher on him than I am on Zibanejad for this season. I have concern about regression for Zibanejad.
Yeah, me too. So do I.
He's been. He's again. He's a high shooting percentage guy for his entire career. I don't know why I get the vibe he's an old 27. I mean, that's probably just a silly thing to say from where I'm sitting, but that's just a feeling I have. I know I'm not alone in thinking that. I know you look in the hockey stats world, a lot of people have him pegged to regress a little bit this year. But I think Buchnevich moves up. I think, the opposite. I think this could be a breakout year for him.
Well, it's a good point you bring that up, Rob, because obviously he was under the weather starting the season. He's probably not going to play Thursday. He might not even play Saturday. So if he's behind the 8 ball already when it comes to his physical conditioning. And they play that condensed schedule. They're playing in a brutally physical division. I think we all worry about his regression this year. Can he come close to duplicating what he did last season? And they need him. If they're going to make the playoffs, they can't afford to have a regression from Zibanejad. They need for him to at least maintain the level that he had last year, if not exceed it. So I think that's a definite concern. I think it's well-founded. And I think he has to prove everybody, he's got to make everybody feel more comfortable with this play coming right out of the gate. Even though he may not play the first game or two. How about the fourth line? That's a line that Larry Brooks, with the Rangers has been called the leftover line forever. You look at the New York Islanders, they've had one of the best fourth lines in forever. They play them 9, 10, 11 minutes a game. They're an intimidating line. They can score goals. They shut down even, quality lines, just not the other team's fourth lines, but they go, they have a physical presence to them. And it would be nice that the Rangers could have, and that's why I was hoping the Rangers would sign Matt Martin to go along with Lemieux and Howden. I really thought Matt Martin could really provide some leadership in the room. He could be a physical right winger to protect some of the young kids. And I really thought that was a missed opportunity that the Rangers didn't sign a physical fourth liner like Matt Martin this offseason. And it looks like this is going to be the same thing all over again. You're going to have Lemieux. You're going to have maybe Howden if Howden's not moved up to a wing position in the second or third line. And then you throw in a Di Giuseppe or a Kevin Rooney. Same old. I think the fourth line is a very underappreciated line. And I think it's one that the Rangers really have not been very smart in deploying. What are your thoughts?
I agree.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think that they're probably the weakest fourth line in the division.
Oh, definitely. Mike, what are your thoughts? Don't you think the Rangers should have made a move for like a Matt Martin, somebody who's comfortable in the fourth line, who knows how to do it? And
I don't think Matt Martin's very good. I just think I think getting rid of Brett Howden was a good move. He was atrocious all year last year, and I think he was, him centering the fourth line was a source of a lot of the Rangers' headaches last year. And getting rid of him and him finally falling out of favor with David Quinn, I think is an overall positive.
Well, Brett Howden's still on the team,
but he's
I just
he won't be playing.
I don't think he's going to be playing much. And I think Kevin Rooney is going to take a spot this year. And I was hoping Morgan Barron might have made a little bit more of an impact in camp, but it looks like he's going to be starting the year in the AHL too. But yeah, I think the Rangers will have Lemieux, Rooney, and a guy like DiGiuseppe who has a little bit of offense, kind of some guys that Quinn can count on as veterans, a steady kind of presence. They're not going to blow you away. I don't think they're going to score too many big goals this year, but good defensively and overall steady that aren't going to kill you. After last year, I think they just want stability there. So that's what they'll get with that.
A couple points on that. If that happens, then it's the same old. Then they really haven't taken the line seriously enough. And like Rob, I think you agree. I mean, they're probably the worst fourth line in hockey. Now, Brett Howden has had a very good camp. I mean, Quinn has said that the kid has really had a very strong camp, and that right now he's penciled in to center that fourth line. I don't know why you're down, Mike, on Howden. I mean, he's very versatile. He's only 20 years old himself. I think he's going on 21, and he can play the wing. As a matter of fact, he was playing first-line center in Zibanejad's absence this week during camp. So, I don't think Kevin Rooney is going to be playing center, at least not yet. I think he'll probably be the extra.
They just had Howden taking Zibanejad's spot because he's kind of like the taxi squad guy. He's like the extra. But I think he is 22, so he's not one of those teenagers anymore. He's got some years under his belt. He was just I can't express enough how bad he was last year on that fourth line. He really was just hapless on that line. So I don't see him playing much. I think he's probably not in the. I know that Quinn likes him. He liked him last year. That's why I got the minutes. He had some nice things to say about him this camp. But the way I see it playing out is that with all the young players the Rangers have, he's probably blew his chance. He'll be gone at some point. They might try him out if the guys they have now aren't working out. But I don't see him being a long-term solution there. I don't see him starting the season there. But I think the fourth line is like, it's like special teams in football. There's guys that come out of nowhere to become, good players each year. It's different every year. Like I said, a lot of times the fourth line is greater than the sum of its parts. You get some guys that just work well together. You get some guys that just are having good years. And, you never know what you're going to get. So who knows? I think, Brendan Lemieux is going to be on there. Bill DiGiuseppe has had some really good outings for the Rangers before. They know what you're getting with him. I don't mind him. And then Kevin Rooney, I don't know too much about. But if he's solid defensively and he's not going to break your back like Howden did, then I'm fine with them starting the season with him at center.
Well, special teams can make or break a championship, and they can make or break championship teams. And I don't see how you can call the Clutterbuck, Cizikas, and Matt Martin line nothing but the best fourth line in hockey, and they do play a role, and they do have an impact on the game. And I can see how you don't think Matt Martin's a good hockey player. I mean,
yeah, I with all due respect, I think you're biased from the playoffs, and Matt Martin had a few good shifts and some big hits, and that's great in the playoffs. And I agree, that's the kind of stuff. Whether you want to talk about, the teams that have won in the past 15 years, whether it be Chicago or LA and Pittsburgh, their fourth line steps up in the playoffs. But over a 50-plus game season, Matt Martin is well past his prime. And he has a lot of holes defensively. I don't see him playing a full season in New York. I think he'll be a scratch sooner than you think.
I'd be shocked, especially since Lou Lamoriello just signed him to a 4-year contract, and that line has been producing more than just the playoffs last year. They've been a mainstay on that team for the last 7 or 8 years now. It's just not last year's playoffs. They have been the steadiest fourth line going back to, I think, 2014, 2015. Those guys have been together forever. So it's just not last year's playoffs. Yeah. But anyway.
I just think there's too much is made of teams' fourth lines. I think for some reason the hockey media loves to look at a team that's really good and skip the three lines they should be looking at, and then they go right to the fourth line and say, look at this fourth line, it's the anchor of this great team. But it's that the fourth line has no bearing on how good a team is. Every team needs a good fourth line. It's teams like, they always say that about the Boston Bruins. They say about the New York Islanders. The best fourth line in the league is such a weird narrative. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it this way, when Matt Martin's on the ice, he is such, like, defensively, the other team has the puck. It's almost 10% more of the time than the Islanders, which is one of the worst in hockey. That line scores big goals, but it's not. I think there's a little bit of a confirmation bias with fourth line guys, because when they do score, it's so awesome, and it's true. When a fourth line produces, especially in the playoffs, that's awesome. The Devils had that for a long time too, where the guys scoring goals that never scored goals. But when it comes to regular season hockey, Matt Martin's going to be on the ice for 9 minutes.
Well, all I can say is I know Lamoriello and Trotz, when Pajot and Barzell's on there, Brock Nelson and some of the smaller Islanders, he's got some big guys in Ross Johnston and Matt Martin going out there, and they all of a sudden those guys have a lot of time and space in front of them to do their thing, and I don't think the Rangers have anybody like that. And to me, I'm not saying he's Wayne Gretzky, but just the physical presence of having the other team show some respect for the Rangers' young kids. Rangers don't have anybody right now, not a single player that the other team is afraid of as far as physicality goes. Not a single one. So I think that
Brendan Lemieux is like that a little bit. I think Brendan Lemieux fills that role.
Yeah, but he doesn't play all the time, though. Again, it's been the leftover line. Lemieux sits sometimes. He's in civvies sometimes. He's not. They don't have a consistent. They don't have an identity. There's no identity on the fourth line for the New York Rangers. They just haven't had one, and I think they need that.
They need a power forward. That's big and tough. More so than a fourth line. You need a big, strong, guy in the first or second, big guy in the first or second line. The Rangers really, Kreider would be the closest, I guess.
Yeah, but he doesn't. No, he's not. He doesn't have the mental, he doesn't have that makeup. He's not a power forward. He picks his spot. I don't trust Kreider to be a power forward, a consistent defender of his teammates. He's not. He's just not that type of player. I'm sorry. He should be. He's got the body for it, but he just doesn't do it. So but you're right. They need one or two, if not at least two, power forwards up in their first three lines to really give the kids time and space. And that's why I think they have quick exits in the playoffs all the time. I just don't think they're not built for the playoffs. They're just not, and they still aren't. And Lafreniere is going to have to develop into that power forward. I think he can do it. Kakko's got the size. He might have to do it. Gautier's got the size. Maybe he develops and maybe he does it. Buchnevich, I don't know. I don't know if he's physically strong enough to do it. But they don't have anybody right now that is a fear, like a Clark Gillies type or some power forward that instills fear in the opposite team that will leave the young kids alone. They just don't have that right now. But, maybe they'll draft one. Maybe they'll have somebody. Although I think they did draft one this year. Who's that kid that the Rangers drafted in the second round, Mike, this year? A very strong, powerful kid out of juniors in the second round. Didn't they draft somebody, a forward?
Yeah, like maybe the Will Coyle guy.
Yes, Will Coyle, exactly right. So,
but he came with extremely mixed reviews. But we'll see.
Well, the Rangers really haven't been the greatest of drafting in early rounds the last 4 or 5 years, right? There's been a lot of misses. So let's hope this guy does develop. But what do you think of the division? I know we touched on it earlier. Before we wrap up, who do you think, Rob, should be the favorites this year in the Metropolitan Division, the top 3 or 4 clubs that are primed for the playoffs?
Well, I still think the Bruins have one more year in them. Mm-hmm. I know that not everybody thinks that. I think the top 3 teams in the East Well, I think the top 4 teams in the East are Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders. You can make an argument, maybe for Washington. I know just reading all, I've read so many predictions the past couple of weeks. I've seen it all across the board. I've seen some people put Pittsburgh 1, some people put Pittsburgh 4th. I do, but one thing about this division is I think we're close to seeing a change with so many teams like the Rangers and Buffalo and New Jersey having depth in their organizations and draft picks. But for this year, Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh is my top 3.
Yeah, and I think the Islanders have an inside shot at the 4th spot. I agree. The Islanders are just too strong down the center. You got Barzal, Pajot, and Brock Nelson. That's a great top 3. Center ice right there.
And with the way the season is, it's a shorter season, and there's going to be so many games in a short period of time. There are going to be injuries. There's an expansion draft coming next year, so there's going to be trades. And I think the last 2 weeks of this season are going to be so exciting. I think there's going to be so many teams that are still in the hunt, and there's going to be so many. You could potentially be playing 7-8 games those last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So to get 12 points isn't out of the teams will be in it. I think that's going to be very exciting.
And I think if the Rangers,
absolutely.
I don't know, Mike. I think Mike, if the Rangers can keep it close, maybe their youth, maybe the fresh legs or the young legs on their team can really be the difference in the latter part of the season if they can keep it close. Maybe that can separate them from some of the more veteran teams in the league. Maybe that'll help them toward the end of the season. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think that I've been pretty optimistic about them, and I think if everything that I said comes to fruition, they'll have a good shot. They do play in just an absolute brutal, division, but I think like what Rob was saying is, goaltending is a huge X factor this year.
Yeah,
you don't know who's going to get hurt. Who these guys are going to tire out. Rangers have goaltending, so we'll see. And I think that's the X factor. Anything can happen. That's the wild card. And if you have strong goaltending, you're in really good shape. In the Central Division, I think even though the Lightning are facing some pretty significant injuries, I think they're still going to run away with it. I think you'll see the Hurricanes really start to make a push as an elite team as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Of course, you have Dallas still in the mix. It's hard to say. It really is hard to say who will emerge this year. It's not your typical season. But obviously, yeah.
Colorado, I think, is the class of the league right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. Vegas.
The West is this top 3 so strong, and then everything else. But the goaltending's a great point. You look at Pittsburgh. Casey DeSmith is going to get minutes, and that should give Pittsburgh fans something to be nervous about. The Rangers, if with Georgiev, if they're going to be competitive this season, they can't trade him.
I agree.
They're going to need his minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally. He's a good goalie, man. He's good.
He's a good goalie. Yeah. he's, I don't think he's elite level like Shesterkin, like the level of Shesterkin, but he is good. And even Boston, Halak is their backup, but Halak is old, and Halak and Rask have a lot of minutes on, a lot of miles.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, I think if you have to pick a team, it's Colorado. Seeing them play Vegas is going to be really fun. I think the Sharks are dead.
Yeah.
The Blues might have some issues. The Ducks and Kings are young, so that who knows, maybe they'll take a big step. I think Toronto is finally going to be start to live up to their potential. So I would keep an eye on them. They're going to have some good battles with the Canucks, I think, in the Canadian division. And then there's some wild cards. Where does Pierre-Luc Dubois end up? Does Patrick Laine get traded? I think those are the type of guys that truly shift the balance of power in a division. So we'll see.
Laine is coming in with a big chip on the shoulder, for sure.
Yep.
So Kucherov is hurt, right? Isn't he out right now?
Yes, he's out.
Kucherov is out, so that might hurt Lightning they're loaded. Yeah, I think the Lightning. You guys. I don't know Colorado as well as you guys. So you guys seem to think they're the class of the league. Would you say that Lightning are maybe Well, they're the defending Stanley Cup champions, so until they get knocked out, right, they are the champs. But you think they're the two best teams right now before the season starts?
I do.
I still really like Vegas, and they added Pietrangelo to their blue line. You know, I think they have a couple of rookies joining as reinforcements that are pretty good. I think Glass is a really good prospect that they're adding. You know, so and they were my favorite last year. They just had a unusually low shooting percentage. They had an unusually low conversion rate on high percentage scoring chances. So I think they're due for some regression this year, especially in the playoffs. And I think they're a team that people kind of forgot about with all the excitement around, you know, Colorado and with Tampa winning the Stanley Cup. I'm still keeping an eye on Vegas, but Vegas, Colorado, and then, you know, the traditional powers, you know, Boston, Pittsburgh, and then Tampa are my teams to keep an eye on.
Not necessarily in that order, though, right? I mean, you just
not necessarily.
Okay,
it's so hard to tell.
Yeah, and Rob, you think Colorado's the team to beat?
I do.
Okay,
but again, I don't disagree. You know, I think we're all in agreement. All these teams are superb teams, and it's going to be a crazy fun season.
Yeah,
and obviously, and you're obviously discounting the fact that Elias Anderson's going to score 40 goals in Los Angeles.
Of course he is. Of course, yeah. I bet you scores 25. I bet you scores 25 goals this year.
So he's
no shot.
The talk about Elias, he does not have a lot of hype coming into the season. So he's scheduled. He will be on the fourth line in LA. See, when you talk about the young depth of Los Angeles and they have a system not too far off from the Rangers. Elias Anderson's not in it. In fact, the latest projections don't even have Elias Anderson starting on opening night.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
that was what a mess that was. Oh man.
I think he'll be an AHL guy that ultimately ends back in the Swedish league.
Yeah.
Maybe. One of these days, I'd like to talk about the Tampa trade when we got rid of, McDonough and we got rid of
Miller.
Yeah. And what we got back, I know Howden was one of the guys we got back. Was it Hayek, one of the guys, or was that the Bruins trade? We got Hayek.
No, that was Tampa.
Yeah.
Hayek, Howden. We got one of the picks that we got was I think we took Andre Miller.
Yes.
Or Nils Lundkvist, so at least there was that. But no, that was
not a good trade.
As a successful trade. No.
They got
Nemesnikov.
Nemesnikov came in that trade.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Who turned into maybe like a 6th round pick or something.
Brutal, absolutely brutal. All right, guys, any last thoughts before we end the podcast?
I'll just say I think Ranger fans should be happy going this year. I think the goal is don't worry about the playoffs. Just get these kids minutes. Get them, a good solid year under their belt, right?
I agree.
Another year for Kakko, some minutes for Miller and Lafreniere, and go into the 20. I hate not to say this year won't be fun to watch, but be excited for what 21-22 will be like with this team. And
I agree.
The potential and how deep the organization is and what they could do, and how we can talk about them trading away Strom's goals because there's so much behind it. It's a shame what happened with Lundkvist, and we'll probably never see him again on the ice, which is quite a pity. And also, speaking of Tampa Bay and the Rangers, Ryan Callahan retired.
Yeah,
he'll definitely be. He's definitely someone that you talk about forgotten hockey guys in 20 years. I'm afraid Ryan Callahan's going to be on that list. He was so good. Western New York guy. Such one of the toughest Rangers of the past 15 years. When you say Tom. Yeah. I mean, hitting and blocking shots.
Totally.
We'll see. Good news is we'll see him on NBC, and and even better news, we will not see Mike Milbury.
Yeah, I saw that. But getting back to Callahan, I always said I always thought to myself, if Chris Kreider had the heart and the energy of Ryan Callahan, he'd be the top power forward in the National Hockey League right now. But that's for another podcast. But I agree, Callahan definitely fits the bill for the criteria that we're looking for going down the road. And Dan Girardi, too. I think Girardi's now coaching somewhere. I think I read that recently. I think in the minor leagues or in college. I think he's coaching. I read that the other day. Yeah, so Mike, any final thoughts?
No, I'm just very excited to get some hockey back. And, and what Rob was saying, definitely wish Henrik Lundqvist all the best. That was was really tough to see how that played out.
Yeah, his health comes first. Is Quinn on the hot seat if the Rangers don't make the playoffs?
I sure hope not. You're right.
I think so.
He is, but oh man, how terrible! They never had. I hate when professional sports teams do this. He never had an elite team that was gonna. No. I mean, what did you? I mean, could they perform better? Could some guys have developed better? You could always make that argument.
Yeah.
But it's not like he had this great roster that everybody was picking to win the cup, and
right.
So let him. I want to personally, for me, I'd like to know what you think, Tom, but I would like to let him see it through. Give him a few more years.
Oh, definitely. I'm with you. My only concern has always been John Davidson. John Davidson he's been with the New York Rangers organization when they always were just trying to, doing everything they can to secure a playoff spot, trading assets, getting guys at the back end of their career, just, plug and play, hoping that they can just get them over the finish line to make the playoffs. And that's what scares me as him as president of the New York Rangers, is that mentality that, he's been exposed to as a player and as a broadcaster. And I hope not. I still think that their goal is to acquire as many assets as they can to develop the young players, the minor leagues. I'm totally with you, Rob. That should not be a top priority, but it worries me. That was the thing I worried most when they hired Davidson, and I just hope that he doesn't feel the pressure from Dolan to trade away some of these young kids for guys at the back end of their career in the hopes that they can make the playoffs. But hey, we'll soon find out. We'll soon find out. All right, guys. So listen. We'll come up with a player to profile next time. And fans, if you have any ideas as to who you want us to profile, please leave word on our website. So on behalf of Rob Berger and Mike Browning, this is Tom Browning saying so long for the Forgotten Hockey Players of Broadway. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This has been a Go Tommy Boy production.